Hello, and welcome to the Cluster API for AWS community meeting for February 3rd. Um, as always, we follow the CNCF Code of Conduct, which means basically be nice to each other. And I also ask that folks use the raise hand feature in order to uh, bring up a question or respond. So, coming down, it looks like we've got a few things on the agenda. Um, yeah, so Mohammed and Milan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Milan. So we have this. Are you there, Milan? Maybe I don't see you, but so we have this enhancement, like we discussed it a couple of weeks ago, for the feature gate for the AWS cluster and AWS machine feature gate. So we were just waiting for the review. Like we said, the agreement was supposed to be 27, I guess, or 25 of January. So yeah, we'd appreciate if you guys have any other feedback you want to add. Otherwise, it would be good if we can merge it.
Okay. Yeah, that's partly my fault. I did not follow up on that on the 27th. Um, so yeah, lazy consensus has passed. I will go through another pass on there, and if I have no comments, I will go ahead and do the merge.
Thanks.
Okay. Next we have Damiano. You're asking about the elastic fabric adapter, I believe, is what the EFA stands for.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to know if there was any movement of that for request. It sounds like Radek addressed the comments, but we're still waiting on Richard to provide input on the API conventions. Um, yeah, what do we want to do here? Should we ping Richard again? Should we just, move forward? I think should try and yeah, lean towards closing it off at a certain stage, considering we are targeting a release in the coming weeks.
Yeah. So for context, for folks who aren't aware of what the questions were here, um, so the feature is adding support for elastic fabric adapters to network interfaces on VMs. It is a different class of NIC, and the PR that was introduced here used some constants to discriminate between what type it was. So I think we had interface and EFA, and Joel was bringing up that there's a clash between the Kubernetes API conventions and what we have been using because Radek basically used the AWS API values and we passed them straight through rather than doing any kind of translation. Um, my stance is looking at the rest of the code. We're actually favoring the AWS conventions over the Kubernetes ones. And I think making this one follow Kubernetes conventions and none of the other ones um, would actually be more confusing. So this is something that maybe we could address when we look to do an overall API update. Um, so I was looking for thoughts from Richard. I know he is not available today. He's not feeling well. And I believe Andreas is going to disappear for paternity leave. Um, so Daniel, as another maintainer on here, would you be able to take a look on at this within the next couple days and give feedback?
Sure, yeah, I'll try to take a look.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I initially thought that we were doing a mix of Kubernetes and AWS conventions, but from what I can tell, we're leaning more. We're almost always AWS style at this point. So, um, yeah, so that's where we're at, Damiano. But I agree we should probably try to wrap this up. So yeah, if Daniel in the next couple of days you could take a look at that, and I will add a calendar event to check back in.
Yeah, I just tagged you on that, Daniel, so you will get a notification on GitHub. Um, yeah, I think it's the only like missing bit on that review, so it would be nice to not, stale the PR because of um, yeah, API polishing, which is of course important, but as Nolan mentioned, I think we need a facelift in general, API wise, and it might be worth doing it as a bulk in API when we do API bumps overall. So yeah, that's my 2 cents as well. But yeah, let's see what Daniel thinks and let's try and move forward with it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then Mohammed and Milan, you have another topic, VPCT. I'm not sure what that acronym stands for, or what the T stands for anyway.
Uh, to be honest, I don't know either. I think it should be just VPC. Not really sure what that T is for. Maybe someone changed I don't remember. I put a link for the Slack discussions we had here, but maybe it's get deleted or something. It's just VPC and cloud formation.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pretty much continuation, or maybe we would like to continue the discussion that happened last week on the Kubernetes Slack on the Kappa channel. And essentially, we would like to be able to provision the networking stack for Rosa through Kappa. Of course, we started with investigating how EKS does it. And well, then, of course, there was the other option of using or integrating CloudFormation, since CloudFormation is what Rosa Sila uses to do the same thing, right? Rosa Sila uses CloudFormation template under the hood to provision VPC, subnets, etc., etc. That was the initial idea, though it is my understanding from the discussion that happened on Slack that I don't know how to say this. The cloud formation part is not exactly desirable thing in Kappa. To be quite frank, I don't fully understand the reasons. I understand partially the reasons. I don't fully understand the reasons. To be honest, I think the implementation using cloud formation would be or could be fairly simple and straightforward. We would pretty much just reuse the same template that Rosa Sila uses, and the rest is, well, just implementation, let's say. I would just call the CloudFormation API, and that's it, pretty much. I don't know. Does this sum up the problem well?
It does from my perspective. Mohammed, you've raised your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea behind proposing using cloud formation that it might benefit the community and the work here. So, but we are not sure about that. So like if let's assume we propose an API CRD that you can use to create a cloud formation template through Kappa, is that will benefit other projects, other teams, other community directions? Or we can just stick with using the same network APIs we already have. We are in between, both directions. So we just see if someone like have an opinion if the cloud formation is good. So then we can go ahead for that. It will benefit everyone, as well in other use cases.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so to provide kind of my stance on it, if I'm understanding your request correctly, the request is to support some sort of CRD that would allow an arbitrary um, CF template. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So from my perspective, I think the tricky part of using the template, and I could be wrong on this, but I think it would be harder for Kappa to track the resources that the CF template creates because the user would always have to provide the correct tags to those resources, right? So unless we do some sort of intelligent templating to mark those, I was thinking about this a little bit over the weekend, and it's also possible that the resource containing the CloudFormation template might just be able to say, if you delete the resource, issue a deletion for the entire CloudFormation stack, and that could theoretically take it with it. Um, I know right now Kappa uses CloudFormation to kind of bootstrap itself, where if it doesn't have all the IAM resources and everything in order to run, we will use that. Richard mentioned some Google Summer of Code work that was going on, I think, in 2023 to remove that. Um, and then, yeah, Julio, you were raising your hand and had some thoughts in chat.
I've been experimenting with CDK Go around the part of having dynamic lookups or conditions, and so the what I mean is the end template might be generated, not necessarily written, and we could integrate that perfectly within Go. So that's and the results can be exposed, so they could be tracked just like any other resource. So in general, I think this sounds like a quite a good idea actually.
Uh, can you the project you're talking about? Do you have a link to that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's AWS CDK Go. So basically, object model that generates the CloudFormation template, and they have bindings for most languages. So let me share that link. I'll put it in the chat. And I'll be using that to deliver a few solutions from our team regarding installation, setup of clusters, API, and things like that. Helps a lot because managing CloudFormation templates by hand has its challenges. So, and that's pretty solid. CDK is a project I've been using for years now. So it's good stuff.
Gotcha. So yeah, so this is translated instead of providing the CloudFormation template strictly as a string, this allows you to make it a little more dynamic, right? And so
Yeah,
a string's generated from input you provide.
yeah. So you build a object tree. So you could add the tags, the resources, the everything that the API requires, and then it's synthesized by CDK to the CloudFormation template, and then that is applied And
So we would be able to implement the deletion and update
yeah,
through this as well.
yeah, and also through the cloud formations, for the formation API, you can get like everything and even request for drifts if something is manually changed. It's super full featured. So
Yeah, Mohammed.
So let's take it further. So, like, let's assume, like, when you create a cloud formation template, the resources you create from cloud formation template perspective, you don't really need to keep following those as an end user through cloud formation. Like, for example, when I use cloud formation to create a VPC, the VPC is created. But if I got problem, I go to the VPC console to check what the VPC does, if it has a problem. So let's assume if we start implementing that through Kappa, when the cloud formation having an issue problem, we stop at the cloud formation level. But if we move forward to the resource itself that's created, that could be like a challenging for Kappa to follow up. So, like maybe in that case, we can just stop, in validating the cloud formation template is good or not, or the status of the cloud formation template, but to move forward and track the resource creation status, give it feedback to Kappa, that might be, or it will be difficult, to because too many resources, too many kind of resources you can create and update, and so yeah. So I'm just thinking aloud with you guys. It might be useful if we are planning to use cloud formation to just stop at the cloud formation status level, like if it's correct, created or deleted or just, but to deep further to the resource itself becomes harder to use, I guess.
I yeah, I would agree that so if we had support for this, I think I would agree that we would not try to have Kappa adopt those, right? So it is effectively a slim wrapper around the state of the CloudFormation stack to say, I see that the stack is ready, or or something's wrong, or it was torn down, that kind of thing. So reconciling any of the resources that would be in this template definition would not be Kappa's responsibility. They would all be reflected in CloudFormation. Um, yeah, I agree. Like if we created them in CloudFormation and then tried to adopt them or something as Kappa objects, that would be probably clunky and error prone. Um, and yeah, could easily result in orphaned uh, objects. Um, I'm I'm still on the fence about creating arbitrary objects, in part also because of CRD length limits. Um, is conceivable that if a user could just drop a text template in, they could try to create anything they want. And Kappa itself is not necessarily about managing every single AWS offering. Um, yeah. So, Milan.
Right. So this is not directly a reaction to what you guys were saying now, but during the discussion last week on Slack, somebody, and I forgot the name, the person, but somebody during the discussion mentioned this thing called networking V2, right? So I am not really sure if I fully and correctly comprehend the idea. So please correct me if I'm getting this all wrong, but my understanding of networking v2 in Kappa would be all these uh, atoms or the components of the networking stack would be represented by their own CRDs with all that it takes, right? Is that the idea for networking v2?
Yeah. So sorry, I'm typing in and trying to respond.
Sure.
Um,
No worries.
yeah, networking V2, I think there's an issue out there about it. I don't know if it specifically calls it networking V2, but is meant to be a rethinking of how we handle all the networking resources. Um, what you guys are highlighting is that different offerings within Kappa's umbrella might need different configurations. So you've got stuff that is strictly managed by Kappa, and that needs one set of configurations. You've got stuff managed by EKS, which most of what Kappa would do is manage the endpoints and things like that. Um, and then you have Rosa, which is very similar in concept to EKS, but has its own implementations. The idea of networking V2 is to provide more flexibility and more primitives so that you wouldn't have to necessarily use CloudFormation as an escape hatch. I think that is kind of stalled out as contributions have kind of slowed and maintainers are moving around to different things. Um, so that is my understanding of what networking V2 would be. Um, if it was a thing, it might be a viable alternative to propose. Um, I don't know what the timeline would be or if there would be appetite to implementing that instead.
Is there a previous proposal for this being
I would
proposed?
have to go find it, but I believe there's at least an issue documenting the shortcomings.
Well, it's just kind of, you're in between two passes which way. So we can work on having the network KPIs like version 2, as you said. That could be one part. The other direction is cloud formation, but just to come like there is no objections to have cloud formation if we went that path.
I think it would require a proposal, and I think, in my opinion, I think we would have to scope it somehow. Again, I don't think Kappa is about creating any arbitrary uh, AWS resource. Um, and I know Richard said something about, we're trying to remove cloud formation, so he's less keen on putting it in. Um, I would also like opinions from not folks outside of Red Hat. I realize this is Red Hatters talking to Red Hatters, but with my community hat on, um, I think all other things being equal, I would prefer to see networking V2, but I also understand that's going to probably be a very big lift. Um, Daniel, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. As someone not inside Red Hat, what are your thoughts?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I need to maybe look at the details a little bit more, but yeah, sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, that's fair enough. Um, yeah, because I I guess my main concern is I don't want it to be just something that's useful for Red Hat. Um, that being said, I understand that community members may take advantage of it, and then that's another thing we would have to support and track down bugs on and things like that, which would be the same thing with networking v2. Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, we still as well we can make it as a ROSA network. So we just focus this for the network use case of ROSA. And then in
It's
the
true.
future, after we do that, we can then work on version 2, learning from what we did in ROSA and EKS and AWS, and then all of us can merge again, for network version 2. So it's like we still have our options just for ROSA, or work on network version 2, or work on cloud formation. So that the easiest way is ROSA network. This is like we know what we know our architect, and we go for it. And then in the future, we can iterate with the community to have it, that benefits everyone here.
That is a good point, that we could make this a ROSA CRD, not a Kappa scope CRD.
Yes.
Yeah, Milan.
Yeah, well, this Mohammed pretty much said it what I was gonna say, although he used different terms. But I was gonna react to what you said in one like 2 minutes ago. Very interesting thing that you said was that you don't think that Kappa should be a tool that would be able to provision everything in Amazon, and I agree. But that's not really our goal, right? We just need to provision, well, whatever it takes for ROSA to function, or maybe EKS in the future, or AWS self-managed. So I would say I kind of agree with you on the point that it shouldn't be a tool for AWS, for Amazon everything. At the same time, we're not trying to implement everything. Like we're trying to implement VPC, subnets, and pretty much Mohammed just said something to that effect.
Cool. Yeah. So responding to that I think that changes my perspective on it. That if we say, let's say we, uh, yeah, Daniel's having your drop. Um, sorry, getting my train of thought back. So if we made a CRD that was just called Rosa Network or whatever, and it didn't have a whole lot of options necessarily, maybe provide names and stuff that would get put into the CloudFormation template. The CloudFormation template wouldn't be exposed necessarily in the text of the CRD. If is so, I think where I was approaching it from was kind of doing a very naive approach. We're saying the CRD is just like CloudFormation dot cluster.xcase.io, and you don't. The spec is a few fields. The main one being the template. The status would be what's the status that CloudFormation's reporting back about the template. But I think what you, Mohammed and Milan, you're perhaps suggesting is the CRD wouldn't have to have the text of a CloudFormation template in it. It would just have the values that might be dynamic, such as names, VPC names, or IDs, that kind of stuff. And then as an implementation detail of the controller, it could use CloudFormation.
Yes, exactly. This was one of the options that we discussed within the team. Matter of fact, this is exactly how Rosa CLI implements the whole thing. Like it embeds the CloudFormation template in the Rosa CLI binary, and you are able to specify, I think, 4 options for the template, like the name, network ranges, AZs, and one more thing that I'm forgetting, and that's it. And the initial idea that we had is that we would just go with the template and allow modification of these 4 parameters in the custom resource. The Yeah, and of course it would be the CloudFormation under the hood.
Yeah, and then come networking v2 or some other thing, that implementation could be swapped out. Like we might not even need to change the definition of a CRD if it's just the controller changing.
Probably. Like
Possibly, yeah, it may that may be it's always, I think, very optimistic to say that we could just swap implementations, but um, okay, I'm more amenable to it coming from that view. I think I heard CloudFormation and was thinking we just put the text in there, but um, I like the idea more as a CRD that just says this is a Rosa network. These are these 4 or 5 fields we need, and then we somehow generate a template, like Julio's mentioning, generating it via CDK or something like that. Um, yeah. So I would say from my perspective, I'm totally happy to see a proposal for that. And if it's scoped within the Rosa fields, then we know it is a Rosa specific implementation, not a Kappa wide thing that folks can go in and create arbitrary things.
yeah, I would very much like this proposal and the implementation that we just discussed. That being said, I like purely from a design perspective, I think the networking v2 is I don't want to say the best, but just design wise is the best. Although I do understand that it would be like a big amount of work.
Right. Yeah, I understand you guys would probably have tighter timelines than what networking v2 would allow, even if like you guys went and implemented it. Um, we'll also say like there's a lot of API changes we would like to do. There's a running, I don't remember the issue number, but there's an issue tracking changes that we would like to see in V1 Alpha 3, I think, or whatever the next increment we do on our API. But you're right, that's a much bigger lift. And I don't think that's something the maintainer team has time to undertake right now or even review. So for Rose's use case, if we keep it within that directory, then I think I'm happy to see it, and we can be a lot more lenient because it's Rosa specific. Cool. Anything more on that? Okay. Cool. Next, Julio, you have a request for someone outside of Red Hat to sponsor your Kubernetes Orange membership.
Yep, I
I
need that in a ticket. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
If
It looks
anyone
like
will be so kind, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Daniel suggested in chat that he will look at it, and we can like also put this in the Kappa Slack channel. If,
Cool.
so yeah, uh, I'm
Perfect.
I'm happy to give a +1, but I am inside Red Hat. So
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
all right. Any other business? Okay. Well, then I think we can end it here. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll potentially see you in 2 weeks. I won't be here, but perhaps Richard or Andreas or Daniel will be. So, all right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks, Nolan.